Hi there, I'm Trevor and welcome to TH Training Painting. In this tutorial video, I'm going to be showing you how to make these hedges. Yep, staple of many games are the good old trusty hedge. These hedges are incredibly easy to make and can be made really quickly. So, I'll grab my tools, grab myself a cup of tea and let's get to work. The tools and materials I'm going to use are some green scoring pads, craft sticks, a marker pen, a pair of scissors, pencil, a hot glue gun and some glue sticks, PVA glue, sand and some small stones, flock, and then some paint and paint brushes. To start, I'm going to use these craft sticks for the base of my hedge. These sticks are slightly larger than a regular ice pop stick and should be available in the craft section of most discount stores. The sticks I'm using are 18mm wide and 150mm long, which is a perfect size to work with, so I won't have to cut them. And the rounded end will be helpful when I'm laying the completed hedges on the table. To create the hedges that attach to my wooden sticks, I'll be using some green scoring pads, which can be found in most supermarkets or discount stores. They come in many different colours, but try to get the green ones if you can. The scoring pads I'm using are also 150mm long, which is the same length as my wooden stick. So this is brilliant and it means I won't have to trim the scoring pads. All I have to do is cut some strips out of the scoring pads, glue them onto the wooden sticks, and that'll be the basic construction completed. For 28mm scale games, I suggest making the hedges about 20mm tall, as this will provide cover for your models, but also allow them to see over the hedges easily enough. Since my sticks are nearly 20mm wide, I'm just going to use them as a ruler, and using a marker pen, I'll draw some lines, which I'll then use as a cutting line. The lines done, I'll grab my scissors and following the lines I made, I'll cut out strips from the scoring pad which will be used to create the hedges. Remember, take care when using sharp tools. That's all the strips cut out. I got 5 of them from the scoring pad, and with the wooden sticks, I'll glue them together to create the basic shape of the hedge. But before I do that, I just want to mark out the centre of the wooden stick. With my ruler and a pencil, I'll find the centre of the width of the wooden stick here and here, then draw a line to connect them down the length of the stick. You don't have to do this when making your own hedges, but I find it helps to act as a guide when gluing the scoring pad onto the stick. That's the first stick done. I'll just finish up the rest of these sticks. That's all the pencil lines done, and now I'm ready to start gluing. I'll grab this well-used and somewhat battered cutting mat of mine to protect my work surface, especially since I'm going to be using my hot glue gun and I don't mind getting glue on this mat. Once my glue gun is ready, I'll take one of my wooden sticks and a strip of the scoring pad. Then apply a line of glue down the length of the wooden stick, using the line I ruled as a guide. Please be careful not to burn your fingers when using a hot glue gun. I now line up my strip of scoring pad with the stick and set it into place, giving it a gentle press to hold it in. That's the first hedge glued together. The glue dries rather quickly and gives me a good sturdy hold. I'll just repeat the same steps with all the other hedges. That's the hedges and bases glued together. With the glue dry, I can cut away any little strings of glue with a craft knife, and if there's any lumps like this, I can try and cut them away as well. However, because I'll be adding texture to the base, I can easily use that to cover up any lumps. That's all the hedge strips glued onto the bases, and they're looking good so far. At the moment, all the hedges are evenly flat, and this is perfectly fine if the hedge was, say, around a house or a building where it would be cared for and neatly trimmed. But I want to make my hedges look a bit more rustic. So this is easily achieved by just taking some scissors and roughly cutting around the top of the hedge. I'll roughly cut out some chunks from the top of my hedge. They don't need to be perfect. I'll just cut away with the scissors and I'll end up with an uneven edge. I'll just create a few more uneven hedges before moving on to the next stage. Here are my hedges so far and they look fine. I could just paint the base brown and it'll look totally good. But I'm going to add some more texture to the base that'll make them look a lot better. To add some texture, I'm just going to stick some sand onto the base with some PVA glue, and I'll also maybe add some small stones onto it as well. I'll start by getting my PVA glue and a paintbrush, then I'll brush the glue onto the top of the base. Remember to use an inexpensive paintbrush for this. Don't go using your best miniature painting brushes for work like this. Decent, inexpensive brushes that can be used for terrain building can be found in most discount stores. With the glue in the base, I'm just going to grab a few small stones and add them onto it. Some on this side and then some on the other side. The small stones are completely optional, so you can decide how many or how little you want to put on your bases. Then I'll add the sand to the rest of the base. I'm using some kiln dried sand, which I can buy at a local DIY store. I'll use this little scoop to help me pour the sand over the areas that have glue on them. With the sand added, I'll gently tap off any excess. And here's the first base textured. I'll leave it to dry and get on with adding texture to the rest of these other bases. That's the PVA glue and the base is now dry. With some paper down to protect my work surface, I can now start painting the bases. The first bits I'm going to paint are the stones that I added, and with a paintbrush I'll add a base coat of a mid-grey acrylic paint to the stones, which I'll later on dry brush with some lighter shades. That's the grey paint added. I'll just paint the rest of these bases and make sure the paint is dry before moving on to the next stage. With the grey paint now dry, I can paint the rest of the bases. And for that, I'm going to use some burnt umber acrylic paint, which I already have in my palette, and I'll now paint it onto the base. I'm adding some paint onto the stones as well, which will allow me to create some dirt effect. Also, remember to paint the edges of the bases as well. That's the first one done. Now I'll paint the rest. That's the brown paint all dry, and it's now time to start dry brushing the bases. If you've never done any dry brushing before, you can check out my tutorial video here. So the first part to get dry brushed is the stones. And for that, I'm just going to use these lighter shades of grey. With the paint in my palette, I'll start with the darker shade of grey and heavily dry brush the stones. Then, using the lighter shade, I'll gently dry brush the stones to pick up the edges. With the stones now done, I can now dry brush the rest of the base. I'll start by dry brushing some yellow ochre onto the base, followed by some buff titanium. With the paint in my palette, I'll start with the yellow ochre. That's that bit done. Now I'll add the buff titanium with a lighter dry brush onto the base. That's the base all dry brushed, so I'll just finish up these other ones. Here are my hedges, and they are looking good. I could leave them as are and start gaming with them, but I want to add some more texture to the edge to stop it hopefully looking like a scouring pad. And I will do this by painting some PVA glue onto the hedge and then adding some flock onto it. The flock I'll be using is a dark green fine turf from Javis, but you can use whatever colour you have available. I've decanted some of the flock into a container to make it easier to use, and I also have some paper on my work surface that will help with tidying up any of the unused flock. I have some PVA glue here which I thinned down with some water. I'll grab all of my models and simply paint the PVA and water mixture onto the hedge. Remember to paint the glue onto the edges as well. With the glue added to the hedge, I'll bring over my container of flock. Holding the model over the container, I'll just start sprinkling the flock onto the hedge, making sure to get the flock onto all the areas where I added the glue. that's the flock added. I'll wait for the glue to dry before shaking the excess off. And now I'll do the same with all the others. The glue in my hedges is now dry and I've removed the excess flock from them. Before I move on to finishing the project, I just want to seal the flock onto the hedge, and for this I'm going to use some hairspray. Yes, I said hairspray. In particular, some strong matte hold hairspray that'll use to varnish the model that'll hold the flock onto the hedge. The hairspray can be bought from any local discount store, so you don't need to buy any expensive brands. I'll just give the model a spray to cover it, making sure your work area is well ventilated when spraying. Also, it's better to give the model several light coats instead of one heavy coating of the hairspray. The hedges are now sealed, and I could start using them straight away, but I want to add some flock onto the bases to represent grass. And for that, I'm going to use some of this mid-green fine tart flock. I've got some of the flock already in a container, so I'll grab my PVA glue and a paintbrush and paint the glue onto the base in the areas of which I want to add the flock to. When making your own hedges, you can decide how much glue you want to add depending on how much or little flock you want to have in your bases. So you can have your base completely covered in grass, or you can have it very patchy with a few clumps here and there. It's entirely up to you. That's the glue added. I'll just set the model into the container and use my finger to push and brush the flock onto the glue. Once the glue's all been covered, I'll shake off the excess back into the container. And there I go, that's the model now all flocked. I'll just leave it to dry and I'll add flock to the rest of the bases. That's all the hedges completed. In my opinion, they look great and are ready for the tabletop. I just quickly want to mention some other variations that I made. I have this end piece made in the same way as the other hedges, but on one end I've made it a bit rough so it looks like a natural looking end to the hedge. The other piece is very similar to that, but I've made it look like a gap or a break through the hedgerow, and I've made it wide enough so my troops can easily move through it. So I really hope you enjoy this video and you've learned how to make your own hedges. Here's a quick gallery of some of the completed hedges. It'd be great if you could give this video a like or a share, and remember to subscribe if you want to see more of my content. Also, you can check out my website at thtrain.com where you can see more of my work. And if you want to contact me, you can do it through the comment section or through my social media links in the description.